Alright, look, I know just from the title of this video y'all are ready to dislike, unsubscribe, throw me in the cage, just put me in the shitter, but let me just start by saying, I'm not saying this game shouldn't have a remake. Metal Gear Solid 1 Remade would be amazing. I just feel that everyone's focusing on the excitement of it rather than focusing on the potential things we stand to lose as fans with the prospect of a remake. Now, if you guys are willing, just bear with me now and let's start talking about why you might not want a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake. Alright, with that out of the way, I'm Pliskin, let's get right on into it.
So there's something you like about me, huh?
Yeah, you've got a great butt.
Oh, I see. First it's my eyes, now it's my butt. What's next?
A lot of things have changed within the gaming narrative since 1998, and one of the biggest going on controversies right now is this idea of putting in modern day politics into the games that we play, making them more so aged than a game that came out, for example, like Metal Gear Solid in 1998, which even with its cheese is considered a classic. So a lot of people get excited for these remakes and sequels, but then they get really disappointed when all of a sudden certain characters are tiptoeing around certain things, certain female characters have certain, assets nerfed, and this might very well happen with Metal Gear Solid 1. Meryl and her sexual figure was a big part of the first game. I mean, hell, there's a part where you have to identify her while she's in uniform, and you do that by looking for the guard with a fat ass. While normal people would just have a good chuckle with this, there's a lot of people nowadays, or maybe not necessarily a lot of people, but there's a very vocal audience nowadays, most of which don't even play these games, that just seem to get really outraged over little things like this. Certain female characters have to have smaller tits, or they have to have super enlarged muscles. There's a possibility, it's a nightmare, and I feel cursed just saying this, but there's a possibility that Meryl might get the Abby treatment, where her status as a damsel in distress in many points in the story might be switched around, and we might get a lot of those forced strong, independent female character moments. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for creative freedoms. If game developers want to make new games that feature characters like this and new stories with their own independent universes, that's fine, go for it. But what we're seeing is a lot of games getting reviewed and changed. There's a lot of revisions that go into the story, and all of a sudden you get all of these themes and politics and characters that feel out of place and really forced, as if they're just trying to tell us, fuck you for liking, what you like, you have to like what we like. We saw this happen with The Last of Us 2, for example, where we got that long ass sex scene with Abby. I'm not going to show a clip of that, even a picture of that here, because I've seen that shit, it's burned into my eyes, I don't think it should be burned into yours. And again, I gotta stress, there's a real possibility that a lot of these characters you've come to know and love might be reshaped for someone's idea, a very particular political group's idea of what the modern era's standards are. And I don't think a lot of us want this. If you disagree with me, by all means let me know in the comments, but yeah, I really don't want to have to see Snake get cucked up, Meryl be turned into some weird feminist fantasy, and I really don't want to have any of those, cueing Last of Us 2 again, bigot sandwich moments where Snake has to cook up a misogyny sandwich to apologize for whatever, I think they say privilege is the word they use, but yeah, I don't want to see any of that shit. I don't want to see characters I love fall apart before my eyes that way. If that's the case, then I'm just gonna keep on playing PlayStation 1.
Otacon, how do I get this door open? It's not opening?
Going on to a more practical concern, whenever a game is remade, it's usually remade in the image of more newer, successful games. Take the way that Resident Evil 4 completely changed the layout, control scheme, and balancing in comparison to the older Resident Evil games. Both the RE2 and RE3 remakes play more similarly to Resident Evil 4 than the games that they were actually based off of, and this has some positives and negatives, of course. So Metal Gear Solid 1 is obviously going to take on a more intuitive control scheme, most likely that of Metal Gear Solid 5 or Metal Gear Solid 4, and the sandbox is going to need to be rebalanced for that. And more so than that, the level design is going to need to be rebalanced for that. Take the Twin Snakes remake. They included the M9 from Metal Gear Solid 2, and you could literally break every level. Once challenging rooms became a cakewalk. So if they're going to remake this, they're going to make a lot of changes to the layout of Shadow Moses. I don't really mind that, you know? I think a reinvention of Shadow Moses to a certain extent would be great. However, if it differentiates itself, or not necessarily differentiates itself, but if it distances itself too much from the core of what Metal Gear Solid 1 was, if it makes it too easy, like in the Twin Snakes, or make it just feel like another Metal Gear Solid 5 style thing where they get rid of the codec and add in that annoying characters will just chime in during gameplay thing. There's a lot of redesigns that could just really make this feel not like Metal Gear Solid 1. And of course with a remake we want something new, we want something that reinvents the game that we all know and love, but there's a lot of ways that this can go sour. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't expect Demon Souls remake levels of sameness here.
Surely a tall drink of water like yourself can put out a few flames.
Fuck you.
Resident Evil 3 Remake came under a lot of flack for the amount of content that it cut. Entire areas were gone, replaced with smaller, not as interesting areas. This might happen with Metal Gear Solid 1. I mean, let's all hope that that horrible torture scene gets cut, or at least revised to be a lot shorter and easier, because that almost ruins the game for me and puts it on a level below Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. That being said, there might be certain areas that I might really like or you might really like that don't make this new revised version of Metal Gear Solid 1. Now, whether they add in new areas that are really cool or just make the game overall shorter, this might be something that's a big problem for some people. For me, it's not as much of a problem as some of the other issues I've brought up so far, but this is something to keep in mind. When it comes to game design, there's always crunch involved, and when there's crunch, there's sacrifice.
Snake, I've got something to tell you about.
Personally, I'm really hoping this becomes the start of a new Metal Gear Solid renaissance in which the first 3 games get the Capcom treatment, you get Metal Gear Solid 1 remade in all of its glory, the same thing with 2, the same thing with 3, and then maybe we can continue the story and take it in another direction that doesn't completely derail the series like we did with 4. But I have to admit, there is the possibility, especially if Kojima's involved there, that he might just be like, oh, well, we have to find a way to have Snake bring up Venom Snake and things that came in, like, happened in Peace Walker, and we have to have a connection to Metal Gear Solid 4, and we have to include the retcons we made there in this game here, and that would just keep Metal Gear Solid dead. The way that Metal Gear Solid has a future is if they nail these 3 games, remake them, and then they take that 4th game and use it as an opportunity to take the series in a different direction, keep 1, 2, 3 as canon, then rework everything else. With that, Metal Gear Solid has a future, so there's a potential for Metal Gear Solid to not just return to glory, but become better than it ever was. However, this remake might also just put the last, well, we've already had the last nail in the coffin. It might just reopen the grave just to put another nail in there. So let's hope we don't get retcons, but they might seriously ruin Metal Gear Solid 1 by putting on the baggage of every other Metal Gear game. And I don't think any of us want to see that.
It looks like you were right. Okay, Snake. I'll be a good girl.
If you've been on this channel before, you know I never like to end on a negative note. So with that in mind, let's take a second to just appreciate the fact that there's a possibility that this game, this absolute classic, might be remade and achieve the full potential of what this scenario, setup of characters, weapon sandbox, and craziness could bring. I hope these games get the Capcom treatment with Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 1 Remake, maybe not so much Resident Evil 3 Remake, but staying positive, like, there's a lot of potential for good here. Also, something that I personally would like to see in a Metal Gear Solid remake is the content that was cut out from the original release, but then included on the Japanese integral version. Content such as the MP5 SD, maybe as like an endgame unlockable. content such as Meryl inside of the sneaking suit, because I think that would be hella sexy and hella awesome to see. So with that in mind, I hope we get some good stuff like that. Ultimately, I'm staying positive because this is the Metal Gear Solid 1 remake we've been all waiting for. And it would also explain why every other remake project has been shut down, because normally game companies do that whenever they're working on their own remake. Like think about Halo El Dorito Online, and then all of a sudden that gets shut down only because the Master Chief Collection is going to be doing that same thing. So let's hope for the best, stay positive, and just keep aware of all of these potential negative aspects. With that in mind, this has been Pliskin. Thanks for listening. Leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you disagreed with anything I said, or just want to talk about things that you're looking forward to. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Over and out.